just want to say thank you for coming out on this beautiful night. We're happy it's raining because we all know how much we need it. Just want to introduce myself. I'm City Councilor Candy Merrow Carlson. We have with us tonight Councilor Kate Toomey, along with Councilor George Russell. We have Senator Moore with us this evening, and we're thrilled that the city manager, Eric Batista, is also joining us here tonight. We also have several other folks with us this evening. I think you all remember Commissioner Jay Fink, who was here with us back 4 months ago or so. We have Phil Guerin, who's here with us tonight from DPW. We have Brian Shea, who is with Stantec tonight with us. We have Morel Stone from Mass DEP, Mary Jude from Mass DEP. We have John Odell here with us, who is the Chief Sustainability Officer for the City of Worcester. So as we said when we were here a few months back, that we would be coming back and doing a follow-up in terms of what took place on the lake and what our plans are moving forward. So at this point, I'd like to turn it now over to Senator Michael Moore.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I'm sorry the crowd is not as big as it was last time. I think you'll find the information is good news, and things are moving in the right direction. As we said before, and I think as the city said, they were going to have an engineering report or analysis done. So you'll hear all that tonight, what they're expecting is needed for work and what the potential cost would be. And we've got some other information that we've accomplished on the state level, which hopefully will be positive in getting this rectified in the next, I guess, the nearest time frame. I don't want to put a time frame on it yet, but in the near future. Can't hear me? Okay. So hopefully you'll be happy with the direction that the project is going, what's going on. And, you know, we from the city end to the City Council, Donna Clorio. No, we promised you would have a follow-up meeting with the status and how things are going to be moving forward. So we wanted to make sure we did that before the end of the year. But again, I think you should be happy with the direction everything is moving in, from the engineering report to hopefully the financials that may be involved in having to pay for this work. So I am going to turn it over to Superintendent Jay Fink, and I guess he'll get into all the details of what's going to be needed to correct this problem. So, but again, thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Senator. Well, you know,
Don't go too far.
I know, I see that. I figured I'd come to the masses. Counselor took all my introductions away, so there goes half of my talk. But I do want to thank everyone for coming out. It shows that, you know, not only you care about the lake and the environment, but you're also doing your civic duty, keeping us in task to hand that, you know, we need to have complete transparency in what we're doing, what we're proposing, and we want to share that information with you. I just want to recap a little bit about, you know, what brought us here today. Back on February 6, 2022, the Lake Ave pump station flooded. Wastewater overflowed a manhole in the parking lot, subsequently entering Lake Quinsigamond. Staff and contractors responded, and work began to pump out the flooded section, dry out the electrical equipment and controls, and mitigate the amount of sewerage that was released. A fleet of hired tanker trucks started pumping and hauling sewerage that afternoon in an attempt to reduce the volume of wastewater entering the lake. At that point, the approach to regaining pumping capacity was twofold. One, an attempt to dry out the controls and the electrical components with the hopes of restarting one of the 4 pumps in the station. And two, get a series of pumps that could be set up outside the station to effectively bypass the station completely. The area of the station that housed the pumps and controls was pumped out. Blowers and heaters were brought in that night. And fortunately, as of 5:40 p.m. the following day, pump number 4 was successfully started, bringing an end to that overflowing conditions. Large pumps were secured and did arrive shortly thereafter, and were installed to provide a redundant and independent operation when and if needed. Those are the pumps that are sitting in the parking lot that you see there now. The overflowing situation lasted approximately 36 hours and resulted in almost 5 million gallons being released. Tankers were successful in handling and hauling away about an additional 500,000 gallons of sewage. The catastrophic failure of the station was traced to a hole that developed in the suction side of pump number 2. Stantec Consulting Services has been hired by the city to assist us in understanding what occurred and developed short and long-term steps to be taken. Stantec is an engineering firm that started in 1954 and currently has approximately 25,000 employees working in over 400 locations across 6 continents. It should also be noted that Stantec Consulting Services was not involved in the previous upgrade of the pump station and therefore provided a very fresh perspective. Staff from the Department of Public Works and Parks has met with Stantec Consulting Services weekly since that station failure, and the reports have recently been documented. The Jackie Burmeister, who had been here at the last meeting, as most of you know, deals with the lake and the water quality. She's not with us tonight. Mr. Odell is with us, who's our Chief Sustainability and Resilient Officer. The report, her latest reports and her continual updates of that data is on the city website, and I encourage you all to be able to take a look at that. As well, that was published, and many of you have it. The reports that Stantec has produced are also online. This evening, I'm going to ask Phil Guerin, who's our Assistant Commissioner of Water and Sewer, as well as Brian Shea, who's the principal from Stantec, to share with them some of what we've done to date, what the findings are, what their discoveries are, and where we're going in the future. So with that, I'll turn it over to Phil. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good evening, everyone. So I'm kind of torn here because part of me is loving the rain. That's the water side, and we've got a drought obviously going on. And the other part of me has to deal with the sewer and stormwater system. We don't like the rain, so I think I might be bipolar or something at this point. So what I thought I'd talk to you about tonight is a little bit of history on the Lake Ave Pump Station, because it puts a lot of what we're doing right now in context. So the original Lake Ave Pump Station was built in the 1930s. The station, the building that is there now, was an upgrade in the 1950s. It has since been upgraded twice in the 1970s and most recently around 2015. Now, the latest, the historical problems that occurred there before the 2015 upgrade were about overflows caused by a lack of capacity. We get more flow going into the station than the pumps could handle, and it would overflow into the lake. So the 2015 upgrades were designed to correct that problem by creating a capacity of 20 million gallons a day. And with that capacity, we could handle everything we had ever seen before as far as flows. Now, just as far as flows, this is a sanitary sewer pump station. But the flows in a sanitary sewer can increase during wet weather, and that occurs for 2 reasons. Infiltration is something that occurs when the pipe may have cracks or holes in it, or there's joints between pipe sections, and groundwater can seep into the pipe. So you get extra flow going into that pipe besides just the sewage. So, and the infiltration is mostly groundwater, most common in the late winter, early spring when the water table is highest. In an area next to a lake, the water table tends to be close to what the lake level is, so you may have more infiltration going on there. The other source of water going into a sanitary sewer is inflow, and that is more like stormwater getting into a sewer. It could be seeping around manhole covers into the sewer. It could be you have a catch basin that's not connected to the drain, but inadvertently connected to the sanitary sewer. You could have people running sump pumps in their basement during wet weather. Shouldn't be connected to the sanitary sewer, but sometimes they are. So those sorts of things, that's inflow. It adds to that flow. So during wet weather, your flows can go from, right now we average about 3 to 5 million gallons a day, probably 3 million gallons a day as of late because it's been so dry. But during real wet weather, you can get 12, 15, or even up to 20 million gallons a day going into that station. So 2015, we spent a lot of money, somewhere on the order of $8 million to upgrade the station so it could handle these higher flows and hopefully put an end to these overflows caused by capacity. So none of the recent overflow events, and there's two particular ones. There was August of 2017, and then obviously there was a February 2022. Neither of those overflow events was a result of a capacity problem. It wasn't a flow problem. There were mechanical problems, control problems, electrical problems that occurred at the station. And this was the new station since it was upgraded. But none of those had to do with there being too much flow and the system not having the capacity to handle it. But the mechanical problems that we most recently saw in the February event and the ones we saw in the 2017 event are both indicative of, really since we upgraded the station in 2015, of ongoing mechanical issues there that have really plagued the station. We haven't found an answer to them. We were searching for an answer and actually had Stantec on board to start looking at some of the pump station and pumps in particular when this event in February occurred. So, and prior to Stantec, we had other firms in looking at different components of the station, trying to find out why pumps fail so often and why we have seen some of those recurring problems. They don't always lead to overflows, but when you have real bad timing, the overflow did occur. One other thing I want to talk about when we're talking about flows is the flows into Lake Ave Pump Station have not been on a steady increase over the years. In fact, they've been declining. We took about 1 million gallons a day out of that station when we started operating the Whitler Drive pump station, the new Whitler Drive pump station that went online in around 2019, I believe it was. So that took about almost 1 million gallons of flow out of Lake Ave. The other thing we've done is we do what are called inflow and infiltration studies and repairs in the sewer system to keep some of that other clean water out of the sewers. So we have done that in a portion of the Lake Ave pump station contributing area, where we do the studies, find out where the water is seeping in, and then we do lining of the sewers to eliminate that. We have another study planned. It's part of our integrated water resources management plan, scheduled for 2024, where we're going to do what we call the northern tributary to the Lake Ave station. So that's the area from almost from the summit south to the station, where all of that sanitary sewers connect to the station. So we're going to do that II analysis, is what they call it, to look for sources where there's clean groundwater or rainwater getting into the sewer. So once we do that, we'll be able to reduce the flows even further. But we've already done quite a bit of that in other parts of the drainage area. So it's made a difference. The flows are not increasing, but have actually declined in recent years. And in our work, I believe will help further that along. So that II study is scheduled for, like I said, 2024. We are applying for a state revolving fund loan grant next spring. That's the way we get money. Some of the infrastructure, the new infrastructure money from the federal government, is available only through the state revolving fund. So you have to apply for it for a study like the II study. We can apply for it next spring. But we also applied for about $6.2 million just a couple weeks ago, something Stantec did for us to seek funding for $6.2 million of upgrades to that station. So that process, we have to apply for it in August. We'll have to wait till January, February, March, April, somewhere in there to find out whether we made the cut. There's a lot more money available this year because the infrastructure money is part of it, but there are also going to be a lot more applications, so there's more competition. But we think we're in pretty good shape to get some of that money. So that's a whole process, but it will be a way. It would be a combination. Some of it may be a loan, some of it may be in a form of a grant where it doesn't have to be paid back. So we are trying to find ways to fund all this and moving ahead. And I can turn it over now to Brian to tell us a little bit more about what Stantec has found and what our next plans are.
Thanks, Phil. Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Brian Shea with Stantec Consulting. I have over 30 years experience in the consulting engineering field. The majority of that experience has been focused on municipalities, working with municipalities and public agencies, predominantly on municipal wastewater pumping stations. And our firm is a multidiscipline firm. There's a team that I've actually put together to assist me on this. We have electrical engineers, instrumentation engineers, and other mechanical process engineers that we've relied upon as part of the study and the work that we have done to date. And as Phil had mentioned, the city actually reached out to us ahead of the February 6th incident because of the continued operational issues that the station has had. It's just been a nightmare for DPW staff since the station was put online in 2015. And shortly before the February 6th incident, we were engaged to look at the pump station, really to just verify that the station was constructed consistent with the design that was developed for it by another firm. We also were asked to look at odor control issues. We can touch upon that if you're interested once we complete this portion of the meeting. So we conducted site investigations prior to the incident. We were undertaking our work when I saw the news on Sunday night and spoke with city officials on Monday on what happened. And just to really stay out of their way, we didn't make it back on site for another week or so, just to give the city staff and the contractors the room they needed to do the work to get the station back up and running. From the evaluations that we had done, so the station has 4 sewage pumps in it, 2 large pumps, 2 small pumps. The small pumps are rated to handle the flow conditions that occur the majority of the time at the station, and they're designed to alternate. Flows, so those pumps can handle up to 5 million gallons per day of wastewater flow. The station has the capacity to pump up to 20 million gallons a day. And that is with the use of the 2 small pumps plus 1 of the larger pumps. And the station was designed consistent with the industry standards so that it can meet that 20 million gallon per day flow with the largest pump unit out of service. At the time of the incident, pump number 2, one of the small pumps, was in operation. And looking at the records at the time, the flows were right around 5 million gallons a day, varying a little bit lower, a little bit higher. So on occasion that night, one of the larger pumps was called to turn on to just make sure that the flows were being met. At approximately 3:40, what we suspect happens, because we know that there was a broken shaft, the impeller shaft inside the small pump was broken. We believe that broke while that pump was in operation. That pump is spinning at a high speed, probably 1,800 RPM revolutions per minute. It's a heavy mass. It's probably about 12 inches diameter, 6 inches deep. It's a cast iron assembly. When that broke off at that high speed, we suspect that's what hit the pump volute on the suction side and caused the hole in the pump. The way the controls are, that would not be sensed normally. And the controls on the station, because the motor was still spinning, it was sensing that the pump was still in operation. The larger pump was also in operation. Now, with the impeller broken, the smaller pump was not delivering any flow. The larger pump kept that discharge piping pressurized, forcing the wastewater through that hole in the pump, resulting in the flooding in the wet well itself. We also suspect that, given the pressure and the size of the hole, there was significant spray. That impacted the electrical controls in the pump room. The electrical controls shorted out, all pumping stopped. And all that happened probably within about a 9 or 10 minute time period. Based on the records, we can see that there was flow through the force main at 3:41, and the next 9-minute interval, there was zero flow leaving the station. So at that point, wastewater was starting to accumulate inside. Exactly what caused that impeller failure, we don't know, but what we have recommended, and we are in the process of undertaking now, is an additional fluid dynamic study just to look at the hydraulics within the system between the wet well, where the sewage goes to the station, and the pumps themselves. Preliminary checks noted some high velocities in that suction line, higher than what we would normally expect. So we're recommending and currently undertaking that additional study to see if that is causing issues resulting in vibration issues and other premature damage to the pumps that obviously has been experienced. Obviously with a catastrophic event that happened on February 6th, but in review of other maintenance records that the city has provided as part of our study. And I mean, we've looked at a series of work orders with a private contractor, over an inch thick. It's just very, very evident that there have been significant operational issues that the city has been trying to work through since 2015, when the station was put online. So we put together 2 reports for the city, recommended short-term suggestions for improvement and also longer-term improvements. Our focus initially was to recommend improvements that could improve city's response time should another catastrophic situation like that happen again. And first, there's a series of control panels, not only for the pumps, but also for valves that are on the discharge side of the pumps. A lot of those panels were down in the pump room, became submerged, got sprayed, shorted out. So we made recommendations for that equipment to be moved up to the upper level in the station. We made recommendations for separate dialer for alarms from the stations going out. Have also recommended control system changes to give the city more flexibility to be able to use a larger pump when the 2 smaller pumps are normally the ones called on initially to operate. And also to continue with the permanently installed bypass system in place. And to date, the majority, if not all, of those recommendations have been implemented by the city staff. And that report was probably issued within a month or so after the incident, maybe a little bit longer than that. But the city has acted quickly to implement those recommendations. For the longer term, again, we had recommended that study on the suction side of the pump system, and that is an ongoing study right now. One of the operational issues that the city has demonstrated to us and conveyed to us is issues that they've had with a control system, a hydraulic control system on the valves on the discharge side of the pump. And we're looking at alternative valves that are simpler to operate, have fewer controls, and would be a more reliable check valve system than what they have in place currently. And also to replace the pump units. The 2 smaller pump units had roughly 40,000 hours of operation time at the time of the incident from 2015 when it was put online. In comparison, the larger pumps only had about 3,000. So it's like a 13-to-1 ratio between those pumps. So it's the 2 smaller pumps that are doing the majority of the work there. One of the things that we want to look at is, can we put in pumps that are more equally sized so that you can get better distribution of runtime and even more even wear on the pumps over a longer time period than what's currently been seen. And the challenge with that, with what we're looking at, again, where the station is designed for 20 million gallons per day. The majority of the time it sees between 3 to 5 million gallons per day. So you need to have a system that has the capacity to handle the major flows when you need them, but also can run efficiently for the majority of the time as well. So we're working with pump vendors and to look at various pieces of equipment that they have to try and come up with a good selection for that. And again, have worked with the city to put that application together for construction project for funding through the state SRF program. Hopefully we're fortunate enough to score well in that and make the intended use plan. And there's that program then has a follow-on system where the design would occur next year. Bidding would occur January of the following year, and we'd be able to move into construction after that. So, yes, Michael.
What would it have to take if you would hit, what would it have to take if you hit 20 gallons, 20 million gallons of that benchmark?
So, that's, maybe Phil could speak, more, with more experience on when that's happened. Typically, those flow events occur during the spring, when in a traditional year, that's when you would have the most rainfall. That combined with snowmelt. And
Would you anticipate it reaching that high, or would you anticipate it much smaller?
From the flow records I've seen, I hadn't seen anything up to 20, but
Yeah, and I don't know that we've ever seen 20 there. I mean, it was designed for that because that was the, when they were doing the redesign of the station, that was sort of the outlook of what we would need to do to capture a peak flow. But I don't know that we've hit that. I know we've gotten up to like 12 million gallons a day. If you think back to last summer, we had 15 inches of rain in July, but we didn't come close to any of those numbers there. Typically, it would be in March or April. You just had a lot of snow melt, the groundwater's high, everything's wet, and you get 3 inches of rain. But even with that, 20 is more of a planning for some point in the future. I think the design year was 2030. So,
I just want to make sure that we're not putting something in that is not anticipating. We keep hearing these 100-year, 200-year floods that or rainstorms keep occurring much quicker. I hate to see us put something in that it's not going to be able to handle that capacity. So that's something I'm asking.
yeah, it's certainly not our intent to recommend a design that would have less capacity than exists now. And we would certainly want to look at planning studies that the city has just to see if there is a need for a higher flow than the 20 MGD, but certainly that would be the starting point going in.
and this, just keep in mind, this is a sanitary sewer pump station, so it's not pumping combined sewer flow where you have a pipe system that collects both stormwater and wastewater. It has clean water, rainwater, groundwater getting into it through II, but it's very, very different than like a combined system where you could get a lot of stormwater. So, and as we continue to do things to reduce the amount of II getting into the pipe.
What's II?
It's inflow and infiltration. Infiltration is groundwater, inflow is more stormwater getting into the sanitary sewer. So it's not designed to take that, but it's in, it's a pipe that may be 20 feet below grade and it happens.
Yeah, for pipe cracks, or frequently if some pumps from homes are connected into sewer system as well. So.
Phil, if you could elaborate and tell folks just what the station does, just so that they know. It's taking the water from what area, and it's all funneling down here, and then where is it pumping it up and over, just so folks understand.
So roughly you go to the summit to the north is kind of the northern extreme, kind of the east side of Burncoat Street.
Yeah.
You get down to the top of the hill on Belmont Street, and then south of Belmont Street, I'll say roughly halfway to like Sunderland Road. All of that, all the wastewater, all the sewage generated by all the homes and businesses in that area go to Lake Ave through a variety of larger interceptor sewers and smaller sewers connected.
Even Sutherland Road after Woodland Drive?
No, Sunderland Road does not. Sunderland Road is going to Whittle Drive. But from about halfway between Sunderland Road and Belmont Street on Lake Ave, and north of Lake Ave, and west of Lake Ave, goes.
So fair to say about 25% of the city?
It's something along those lines, yeah.
And then where is it pumped from?
So it all goes to Lake Ave, then there are two force mains that go up Belmont Street to Shrewsbury Street, where they discharge into a large sewer up there. So all of that gets collected at the Lake Ave pump station. It gets pumped up Belmont Street. The two force mains, they're pressurized sewer pipe. And then they discharge right at the top of Belmont Street, where it hits Shrewsbury Street.
So now this is a question that I asked you when you came before the council. I don't even know if the question I gave you was a comment. But I've been around so long in various different capacities on Lake Ave as a counselor, as a member of the Watershed Association. And I just have flashbacks of these things here where, you know, decades go by and the same stuff happens. Why don't we have another station somewhere breaking that up, all that, is there a reason for that? Or is it just financial, that something that we, you know, because we have this flow all going in that same direction. And you would think that if we had some other station somewhere upstream that broke it up, that it would make more sense in the long run. You know, that if we had a catastrophe like this again. Is there a reason why?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, this station was built the current station basically built in the 1950s, and that's what it was designed to do at the time. There was one station that was going to capture all that flow. And we haven't so much expanded the area. I mean, there's probably more houses around since then, but so the station was there, and that's how it was designed. I
understand, and I know it was long before your time, and definitely before Commissioner Fink's time. But it just drives me crazy sometimes to think that somebody flushes the toilet in the summer and it flows down to Lake Ave to be pumped up over Belmont Street to get to the, you know, to the sewer system. That there isn't another system somewhere in the line. It's just put it in your thinking cap. Maybe the administration, we've got the city manager here, the commissioner here with us. You know, just going forward, let's look at this. And then my last comment and question is, what do we have for alarms there now? You made a comment, sir, about increased alarms. Can you tell us about the alarms that you have there now that are gonna, and what if the neighbors could watch for anything, or is it alarms that are gonna go to somebody's cell phone, or what kind of alarms?
Yeah, so it's an elaborate alarm system actually in place at the station. And one of the alarms that was added as part of the recommendations was an alarm for flooding of the pump room itself. There are a series of alarms associated with vibration levels on the pumps. Those alarms are called out to city staff. There's a number of alarms that are more information only, and there are also alarms that, you know, if result in pump shutdowns, that would escalate to a point where the city staff would know that action is required. You know, zero flow through the force main is an alarm condition.
Is there a light that's gonna go off? Is somebody's phone gonna ring?
It's all through the cell phones with the
It's through
city.
cell phones, there's connections, so we have what's called a SCADA system, which is it's a control system for many pump stations located at the Quinsigamond Ave treatment facility. So we have that system that alarms go to, so when we have staff there, they can obviously see them. But there's call-out alarms, and you know, there's a variety of alarms, and the more critical ones do get called out. So they call on phones until the right party picks up, and we get an operator in.
And
We have a question back to you.
About 20 minutes, thank you very much.
I know.
So municipalities, all municipalities from my life experience, do not plan, similar to his comment, do not plan far enough out. We are gonna have catastrophic weather, population is increasing, and we've already had conditions where occasionally we are close to capacity even without failures. So I asked this group to really look into putting in plans in place and trying to get some of this ARA money and other infrastructure money to try to solve this problem for maybe the rest of my lifetime, and not have this pop up in another 5, 6, or 7 years where there's another catastrophic issue because, oh, we just outgrew the system. Regardless of where the things flow, that could be one possible solution or piece of a solution. But I mean, I've lived through the 290, 495 connector on the highway, the Mass Pike, these roads getting redone like every 5 years, and they're still never at capacity. This sounds like that kind of an issue to me. And this is the time in our history where there's a recognition of the infrastructure of the U.S. kind of needing to be overhauled. So how do the stakeholders in this get together and put a really good plan in place and get the funding for it, and do it right like the first time, or at least have a phased plan where the dots get connected someplace? Anybody thinking about that?
So in this particular circumstance, and we know all about old infrastructure. We have pipes in the ground that were built in the 1840s, so that's old infrastructure. This station, I mean, we actually had a lot of foresight, and we rebuilt this station basically 6 years ago, with the expectation that we were getting a station that was a wastewater pump station, 20-year lifetime.
I'm sorry, for how long?
20-year lifetime is what we expect out of a wastewater pump station. So this isn't some neglected old station that we ignored for decades. It was actually rebuilt. The problem we're having is it certainly hasn't lived up to.
It was rebuilt incorrectly, we all understand that. And by the way, go claw back some of that money, but 20 years is not a very long time, is it?
No, but 20 years is, you know, when you're planning a wastewater pump station, that's what your expectation is for its life. So you're planning the next upgrades before you get to 20 years. And it's a never-ending, we have 30 pump stations. It's a never-ending process. You're continually planning, working on pump station. Right now, we have 3 small pump stations that are all being rebuilt. So, you know, we have that in mind. We do plan for the future. When we do a pump station, we have analysis done on what the expected flows are going to be in the planning horizon, so that we will meet those. You know, some of it's guesswork. There's no crystal ball that says we're absolutely 100% certain that flows are going to be this in 20
You
years.
recognize this is the same as the roadway. Till you get all of these estimates, contracts, funding, approved, started, we're 3, 4, 5 years out. The situation's getting worse, and now even if it gets done, you know, you're starting at like 5 years in the future of a 20-year expected plan. These things just don't really quite work well that way.
Yeah.
But-
And if I was just going to build upon what Phil was saying. So, you know, when we say a 20-year life expectancy for a pumping station, the structure itself was built in the 1950s. Maybe there was some, you know, minor modifications, but for the most part, that structure itself has been in place since the 1950s. It's the components within, it's the mechanical equipment within, and that's where the life expectancy discussion comes in.
I am
And
an
it, you know,
engineer, by the way, so-
okay, so it's the motors, pumps that you would expect to get a 20-year life out of, and here they got 6.5, and that's the issue.
Has Stantec ever done any consulting work or engineering work of any kind at all for the manufacturer and the installer for the particular units that are housed over at the facility?
We have designed projects where similar equipment by that manufacturer has been selected by the contractor. So we're consulting engineers, we're design engineers, we'll put plans, specifications together for bidding by construction contractors.
I didn't see the word negligence at all in your report. And that's why I'm asking, because a conflict of interest is generally, you have to admit if the facility that you're evaluating, if there's a conflict present, if you accepted money from the manufacturer or the installer. You didn't do that. So what I'd like to be able to see is, you said that there's a sensor that was missing, right? And if so, we're talking about a 6 to 7 year period of time where the industry standard hasn't changed. Should that sensor have been installed at the time of 2015? Yes or no?
So the report that you're referring to, is that the one that the manufacturer issued last week? So,
Your report.
all right. So I'm not exactly sure which sensor you're talking
The one
about,
you-
but I can
the-
tell
the
you.
one- The one that you had just said on the podium right there that failed, the machine sensed, it did not sense. And now your report says that there should be a sensor there, right?
So with this associated with the shaft failure?
Yes.
So the sensor that would come into play would be that which recognizes that there's no flow in the force main. And if the other pump was off at the time, the controls would have recognized zero flow, and it would have been an opportunity to turn that other pump on once valving was closed.
Can I ask the
But-
question again?
Sure.
Your recommendation of that pump that should be in place now, should that not have been installed back in 2015?
Sensor.
It's a simple
sen-
question, yes or
should-
no?
Yes.
Okay. Phil, has your department consulted with the City of Worcester legal team? And maybe they could follow up and get a better expert report? One that maybe can have an addendum, so that then you can then go to the legal and say, hey, why don't you guys sue the manufacturer? Has that been done?
So we are not at the point where we're talking to the city's law department until we have an idea of the.
That's what we're paying this man for, though.
And their work is not yet complete. We have not identified the cause of failure.
You want money to do something, right? There's your answer, lawsuit. Hate to put you in the spot, thank you for coming, I really appreciate it. If I sound like I'm biting, or, I hope that's not the case, and so forth. I know you're doing your best job. I appreciate you coming and providing answers, but obviously, my point is very reasonable, is it not?
If we get to the point where our evaluation points to negligence or some sort of an error that we feel there are legal
Who
recourses.
is actively asking that question, though? That's fundamental. We had gone over this in the first meeting. Why wasn't it sensed? That's a basic thing. There are plumbers in the room asking that question. And I didn't see that once in that report, except for the recommendation. But obviously, somebody's at fault. You want to have a way that you can find money to make your repairs. That's the answer. So I don't know. It's just one man's opinion.
Thank you.
And Brian, I don't know if you want to, it wasn't necessarily the pump manufacturer. I think what Brian was trying to explain was, had there been an additional sensor installed, then I'm looking at controls and sensors, and then I would have seen that there was a disconnect. So it's not necessarily a pump manufacturer that you're talking about, a pump defect, because we haven't found that. It's more a matter of, okay, should a design have included a sensor? Should it have included a sensor to show us that the dry well was filling up with fluid? That's more of a design consideration. And I don't want to put words in Brian's mouth, but in looking at what the station was and the evaluation to date, we have not found a smoking gun that says, oh, this was the bullet that was missing. Haven't found it. Are there things that says, well, coulda, shoulda, woulda? Maybe. But we can continue to look, evaluate the station. Our focus has been on, okay, what do we have to do to make it better and counter any of these situations that have occurred? I don't think we've come across anything yet that rises to the level of, hey, we have error and omissions by an engineer, or we have manufacturer defect. My manufacturer components have a year or two warranty. This is 6 years old. It's 40,000 hours. It's not, I can't point to that pump and say, I've got a defective pump. It's not quite there.
I actually think you're missing something. You said it, and it's not about Sandtech, so thank you for all of you said. But going back to the 2015 install, you've already said you had an inordinate number of failure reports from repair people going out and having things happen. That company did not live up to its obligations of rising these things up to the city level to either report that there were equipment issues that were out of their control, just like this gentleman is asking, or they were really bad engineers and they installed it incorrectly. Either way, there is somebody that needs to be held liable for this. It's in parallel, these things can't be sequential. We can't be going after money hoping to get it and put this off until we get it, so going after, other types of money makes a lot of sense, but this really does need to be looked at. This is not just a few dollars, this is a lot of money, and there is fault here. 2015 wasn't that long ago,
Finding fault and recouping money is not off the table. I don't want to give you the impression that it is. But again, we're doing things sequentially. We're trying to identify now what went wrong, what do we need to put in place, and we'll continue to look and see if there is something that does garner to the level that says, okay, it's time to engage our solicitor and see where we're going to go.
I will say, if the legal department is engaged, statute of limitations, although, I seem to think that won't be a problem because of the fact that the statute began to toll at the time of the issue. The city of Worcester couldn't possibly have anticipated the issue. They were relying upon when it, in 2015, tasked the installer and manufacturer with outfitting the pump station to be more modern. The fact that it didn't have those sensors, somebody was at fault. So it would seem to be a layup lawsuit that really our good city's legal department can follow. That's just my opinion.
Appreciate it. Councilor.
I have a question. When we're planning this, is there a way to remotely override catastrophic failure in the system if something ever happens again? Is there a way to remotely control it as opposed to having someone come here? Because I would imagine the response time would be quite...
So the SCADA system that Phil had spoken of, that's a remote control. That means I can control it from another system.
All right, good.
The other thing that's in place is the pumps that are sitting in the parking lot. That's a completely separate system. And it actually has an automatic switch over that says, my station goes down, this automatically starts up and starts pumping.
But
Two independent systems.
What happens if it doesn't work? Is there a way for you to be able to remotely say, okay, something happened, it didn't automatically do it, can you do it remotely? Can you override it? I guess is the question.
Do we have that?
I don't believe we have that. I mean, not saying it's an impossibility, but something we should look at.
Because I'm just
But I don't
thinking
know.
about the response time, you physically get somebody here and all that, but if there's a way that you can override the redundancy and all that to be able to make it work. I'm just trying to think of other problems that could occur, and you never assume.
No, and the philosophy behind the alarms is setting an alarm so it gives you an indication long before you need that
Right.
response time.
Right.
So
Okay.
that goes into designing those alarms and at what
Yep.
level does it send a signal?
Thank you.
Sir?
So I read the report that came out earlier this month or last month, and I just want clarity because the report I read said a lot of things were approved for implementation, and I just want to know how much of these recent improvements have actually been installed and are functioning. So the new alarms, the leak bug, the flow sensors, how much of that is approved and how much of it is actually in place working right now in the site?
So the the suggestions from the short-term report, those have been implemented. The longer-term ones, the study that we had recommended on the suction side of the pump, that's an ongoing study that's being undertaken currently. The city is currently looking at replacing one of the check valve, taking out one of the cone valves and replacing one of the, a newer check valve. You've received quotes on that and are
We're
in the.
getting quotes, we're getting pricing, and then we'll order it. and then we'll have to deal with the lead times for ordering
Okay, so
anything
then
right
the
now.
new alarms, call outs, the call out mechanism, the new sensors, those are all installed and functioning.
Yeah, we
And
moved.
there's an upgrade to the system for better control over the pumps, I think.
I think that's part of the longer term
Okay,
plan. We've moved
moved
the
it.
control panels up to the upper level so they're not in the flood zone.
okay,
We have ordered, so the 4 pumps we have out in the parking lot are rentals. We have ordered new pumps, new bypass pumps that'll be there permanently that we're purchasing for $500,000. Those have been ordered, but they're not gonna arrive till late in the year, early next year, just a lead time of getting anything like that. We've got the new check valve that we're ready to order shortly. So we've got most everything that we can get moving is moving, or has already been done.
I have another question regarding the companies that are bidding for these jobs, right? I know that generally we go with low bid. Right? Is there a way for us to do real due diligence in investigating the companies and making sure that their history and the quality of their products is better? And can we make sure that we are, because of past history, that we are getting the best product for our dollar?
Well, I think what Stantec has done is said, hey, this is what you need to do, this is the valve you need.
Okay,
So that we've gone out and procured that valve.
right, but I'm talking about the bids.
As far as when we go and we come up with a $6 million upgrade to the station,
Right,
we can put certain qualifications in play, but you're still subject to mass procurement laws.
So, and with so there are 2 ways that construction projects are bid. Simplistically, it's vertical construction, horizontal construction. And there are different bidding laws that apply to each of those. And in a vertical construction project that this would be, you can put in the requirements that the contractors need to be certified by the state to do this category of work. And there are documents that those contractors file with the state to demonstrate past work experience that they've had. Those owners for the past projects will score those contractors. So there's an opportunity there to implement some stricter requirements than what may be in place on a horizontal type project.
because things have happened in the past where, we've gone off the state bid list and actually if due diligence had, not saying DPW did it, was actually the school department. If they had done due diligence, they would have found, as I did in seconds, that they had some serious financial issues as for the company. They weren't providing the quality products and all sorts of stuff. So there was a lot of issues. So that's all I'm saying is, let's make sure that we're, crossing our I's and dotting our I's and crossing our T's.
Mhm.
So.
Just wondering, reading the report that pump 1 and pump 3 were taken out of service. So did we really even have any backup at that point? Pump 2 failed with the brake. Pump 4 was the actual one that sent the alarm because pump 2 didn't send an alarm. But where were we at that point? And that goes to maintenance and preventive maintenance.
Yeah.
Where are we fully backed up at that point? And where are we now?
Yep. So, and that's actually been one of the topics of discussion for the weekly meetings that we've had. Where do we stand now? Which pumps are in place? Which are operational? So pumps, it is true, pumps 1 and 3. So pump 1, one of the other smaller pumps, had a problem with its volute. It was leaking. So the city was waiting for a new volute to come in to be repaired there. Since that time, they had issues, I believe it was with the VFD for pump number 3, making that inoperable at the time. Again, where the station, and that work was being done at a time when the flows were not expected to reach the 20 MGD level. So, and, you know, the January, February timeframe where ground is frozen, you snow predominantly in lieu of rain, the wastewater flows were at a level that the station had the capacity to handle the incoming flows at the time. You know, unfortunately, that pump number 2 had that failure event occur at that time, concurrent with 2 other pumps being out.
But given the location and this business of sewer and pumping, that redundancy, one is none. The redundancy is key. And I'm just wondering why we wouldn't, like, that wouldn't be a priority to have, in this case, pump 1 and 3 ready to go, you know, because would that have helped after the failure? I know from what I read, pump 2 failed, kind of squirted everywhere, and pump 4 sent the failure out, but pump 1 and 3 never kicked on. But had they, because they were out of service, but if had they been in service, would we be here?
You know, had they been in service, in all likelihood, the same thing would have happened if number 2 was operating at the time, because the hole formed in that pump, and that's what allowed the water to get into the station. So if pump 1 was in place but not operational at the time, it still would have been flooded. Its motor would have, and control panel would have shorted out as well.
In regards to follow-up, in regards to power, backup power, we're in New England, and, you know, even with cell, just transmission for alarms and whatnot, what redundancy do you have in that fact? Now we have an outdoor pump as well as an indoor pump. You know, I know we're only gonna be using one, but if we have a backup generator, is it hardwired to both sets of pumps and just flick a switch and we can get either one going if we lose power?
Yeah. So the station has a permanently installed standby generator
Okay.
to pick up the full electrical load for the equipment within the pumping station. The bypass pumps that are in place in the parking lot have diesel engines with them, so they're not electric pumps. They're reliant upon the diesel engines.
Very good, thank you.
This question here?
I have a question about O&M. Do you have a regular, like maybe annual inspections by an outside contractor, maybe engineering company or someone outside DPW, to do an overall inspection of the pump station? Just because it is so, you know, you have 30 pump stations, but this one is 25% of the city. It's very complicated. We're hearing how complicated it is. The 2017 and the 2022 failures were unforeseen. They were equipment failures. But if we had maybe a regular inspection of someone who really got in, maybe that had been prevented. Maybe not the one this year could have been seen, but something else, the alarms, a new alarm to be added or whatever, just, you know, something.
So we have an outside contractor. They have what we call a pump station maintenance contract, and that's what they do. And they're at Lake Ave every week, either doing work or doing maintenance.
Go ahead.
They didn't see it.
A question about, you guys hired C.H. Nickerson to do the 2015 upgrade. They underbid by 1.5 million, so maybe that's where your sensor went. But I don't actually know because they're the contractor who builds it. So my question is, if we go to upgrade this station, you guys are the design services. So you design it, you create a spec, and then you give that off to a contractor. Contractors bid, and then they decide, you know, they gotta build it. How do you hold them accountable for what they're building? And, you know, 1.5 million last time, was it the spec was wrong, or was it that the contractor said, yeah, we don't need the sensor, throw it out? And how do you hold them accountable?
So the last part of that, I can't say for certain, but I can say that typically the design engineer will be hired to oversee the contractor during construction as well. Depending upon the scope of the work involved, there's more often than not a full-time resident engineer on site to observe the work of the contractor. The materials that the contractor wants to provide on the project, you know, while we put a set of specifications together to give the requirements that we're looking for each, for a valve, for pipe, etc., there are options, there are different manufacturers available to a contractor. The contractor will make a submittal to us on the actual equipment that they propose to use. We'll verify what they're proposing to use against the specifications that are in place. If there are components missing, those need to be identified and returned to the contractor with those notes, which would either require the contractor to make a resubmittal, or you're okay to move forward with this product, but make sure you add X, Y, Z, as we have noted. So, I mean, those are some of the systems that are in place that we're accustomed to working with. We've identified an order of magnitude cost for, and again, it's too soon to get into a detailed level of effort breakdown on it, but just based on percentages, we've given the city a rough idea for what the construction phase engineering would cost, in addition to the actual construction itself that they would pay the contractor.
There's a question here.
I have a question about the smell. You brought that up. I have probably 5, 6, 8 work orders on record. You said there was like an inch of work orders that you reviewed. And you said that the short-term plan has been completed. Well, the smell is still there. I've been calling since 2017. I'm hoping to hear that you're going to remedy it, because it's disgusting. I live at 65 Lake Ave with all of these people.
Mhm.
And to sit on our lovely balcony overlooking the lake can be uncomfortable. And it seems at the present time, I've noticed that at 5:45, the smell comes up, or 11:45. I don't know if you're venting at that point or what you're doing, but I don't like it. And I would think, since your short-term plan is complete, that somewhere along the line, someone's going to come up with a plan for the smell.
Okay.
Good.
So,
Start.
okay. So the Odor Report was a separate study that we had done. And just to give you a brief summary of the work that we did, we had an engineer on site collecting air samples at the station, collected them at a number of locations, at the wet well at the facility. There's a carbon filter for odor control at the facility. We took readings of the air into the odor control unit, out of the odor control unit, to just get a sense for how much removal the existing equipment has. And we also took a reading within the screen room at the facility. So we did air sampling. We also undertook a smoke testing program where you set off smoke in the pump station itself and try and identify areas where there's fugitive emissions getting out through an opening that isn't accounted for, through cracks around doors, et cetera, door frames. What was most noticeable was when the door from the outside into the screen room itself, it was very, very evident that smoke was being released at that time. So if city staff are at the pumping station needing to do maintenance at the facility, anytime that screen room door is open, that's an opportunity for the odors to escape. We have discussed with the city some recommendations for additional screening that could be placed behind the door in an attempt to help retain those odors and not allow those to escape through a fully open door. We have undertaken a dispersion model off of the discharge from the odor control unit itself. And one of the recommendations is that the discharge from the odor control unit be modified to more of not a tall stack, but a shorter stack, to get it above the roof level of the pumping station where it sits low. Having that defined stack, elevating that a little bit from where it discharges currently will create, or will result in much better dispersion and a decrease in the odor concentrations nearby. I believe that is currently being worked out with the contractor as well. I can't say that that stack work has been completed as yet.
No.
We've also identified from the pressure gauges that are on the odor control fan itself, there's an indication that filters need to be cleaned, and while that's a part, we also want to verify that there isn't water building up in there resulting in less airflow through the odor control fan. As far as I understand, those the screening units providing the treatment, those have been ordered, those will be installed. The fan itself has been inspected, and there is a drain mechanism on that. So as part of the contractor's work, they'll just make sure that that drain is functioning so you don't have water building up, increasing the pressure within the unit, resulting in the airflow through. So not all of those recommendations have been implemented as yet. They've been identified, but there is a plan to undertake
When
them.
will that be completed?
It's a constant work. It's one of the things that our contractor's doing at that station while they're there every week. So I don't have a particular
Well,
deadline.
it's been since 2017 that I've been calling, so, and every time I've called, I've talked to a very nice woman over there, very nice. And then this one time I called and I got a man. And what he said was, when you can smell it, it's going in the lake. So that gave me a little pause. That's your staff, I don't know. I have no idea how that works. But it was a different response than usually, here's your work order number.
Let me just offer what Brian has suggested, is that independent of the, what we're talking about, the pumps, the pump room, the valves, there was an independent study for just the odors. Part of what they're looking at is replacing the media. The media is a carbon filter, so it's designed to take out the odors that are there. The media is on order. It's looking to be replaced. As that's replaced, they're looking to make sure drain valves are in place, and there's also looking at moving the stack from where that discharges the what comes off of that odor control. So that's in place. It's in order. It's in working. We don't have a date as to when, again, because of supply chain issues, I don't know when that carbon media is going to get here. As soon as it gets here, we're going to have the contractor install it. I'm assuming it's going to be 6-8 weeks. Hopefully, if everything, if we can get that media here, as soon as it gets here, it's going to be installed.
So I should wait 6 to 8 weeks before I start calling again.
I will give you an update as soon as we have a delivery schedule for that media.
Okay.
Counselor?
Yeah, I just gotta tell you, I appreciate all the reports that have been brought here tonight, but I do have to tell you, I'm very uncomfortable sitting here, and nobody has said anything about holding anybody accountable. And I certainly understand, and I get it, but when we have a pump station, and for all the years since it was rebuilt, that we've had nothing but issues, I'm very uncomfortable sitting here for you, none of you, to say, we will make sure we're not using the same individual or the same company to rebuild this pump station. And I'm very uncomfortable equally around the fact that we haven't even sat down as a city and had a discussion. And Eric, Mr. Manager, I'm not looking to put you on the spot, but I am asking you to have a conversation with all of these folks. And where are we with whoever they are that installed this pump station just a short time ago? We continue to talk about a 20-year span, and I get it that, you work on it as time evolves. But it's a little uncomfortable sitting in this room and nobody saying that we are looking at the last folks who did all this work. Because if for day one, and Mr. Guerin said, from, you know, we've had nothing but issue after issue after issue, have all those issues equal to that failure? We don't know that. But I think somebody should be asking that question, or somebody should be sharing, you know, that no, it isn't. And I'm not hearing that. And I don't think that that makes, if it makes me uncomfortable, I'm sure it makes everybody else in the room uncomfortable, not knowing that we've done our due diligence with this last company, organization, whomever, that we haven't completed our homework and vetted this process. And again, I think that the city has a legal department to look at this. And, you know, again, this usually isn't my style to do this on the floor, but I think we should have been much better prepared tonight to answer those questions.
And if
I thank you for, you know, what you've done, and, you know, look, it was a really bad situation that we were faced with, and we've moved in a direction to fix it, and there's no doubt how much we're all appreciative of that. But I think you gotta give us a level of comfortability that, no, we're not gonna hire the same company who built that station in 2015. And I get the bid laws, I'm fully aware of the bid laws, but I think if we have a major failure, I don't think we should be going back to the same individual, regardless. Thank you.
And if I can follow up on our September meeting of the Public Works Committee, which Councilor Carlson and I and Councilor Bergman are the members of, I'll have on the agenda a follow-up on this, and maybe the administration can come back at that time with some concrete, you know, game plan. Because like Councilor Carlson says, it seems like we keep asking the same questions over and over again. I know you guys are doing the best you can, but it needs to be a bigger picture, and we need to look at it. We'll have it on the agenda.
So first, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight and taking the time to review. Just listening here, you can clearly see that this is extremely important for the neighborhood for many, many years. Spending the time hearing and enduring these issues. But I can assure you that part of the conversation that we're going to have after this is what can we do, and I think Commissioner Fink said it, that the potential of the lawsuits and looking into that is not off the table. And I can assure you that we're going to continue to look through that and see what are the other issues and failures that happen in the pump, and start to ask those questions to ensure that we provide some answers to you, but also to provide some answers for us as a city, because we have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers in terms of how we manage those funds from the state. But again, this is the status updates of where we're at, what we're trying to do to move forward. And we're going to continue to evaluate it and assess it to make sure that at least we're honoring and respecting the concerns that I've heard tonight from all of you, they're real. They're real on a day-to-day basis to all of you in your daily lives. So we want to make sure that we honor that and respect that as well.
Mr. Manager, you know what the work that your team here is doing to rectify the issue with this building is great. It really is. But I think it goes beyond that. And I think that's what people are trying to get the message across.
Absolutely.
And when you have 25% or thereabouts of a city flowing in the same direction, there's a thing called gravity. I'm not an engineer. I don't pretend to be one, but there's a thing called gravity. And if it's going to keep flowing in the same direction, it's just a matter of time. And like I said, over the years, I've seen this happen with my neighbors and my friends, and we've just seen it over and over again. When we put all kinds of money in Woodland Drive pump station, oh, that's going to cure the problem. We did over this station, 6 years ago. That's going to cure the problem. Well, gravity is gravity, and it's all we have so much flow pointing in that direction. We got to look beyond that. Thank you, though.
Second question, is the city committed to still manning the station with a person, given all the The last time he showed, he went down, it was 7 o'clock, there was a delay, had he been there, had someone been at the station? I think I recall you, Mr. Fink, saying that you were, at a certain period there, had someone on board in the station physically 24 hours a day.
That, post that event, we did have someone stationed there 24/7. That has not occurred for some time period. It's on, you know, controls, on alarms and whatnot. In the event that we have significant rain or whatever, we do have folks that are not only at the CSO facility, but also keeping an eye here on this facility and others. So whenever we expect, you know, a significant event, rain, et cetera, we do have people that come in and roll and chase the station.
We didn't have a significant event on February 6th.
I understand.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a question about the filter, or what did you call it?
Carbon filter.
Carbon filter, right. So if we know that there's a supply chain issue, is it possible to order a second one so that, what is the lifespan of them also? I guess that would make sense first.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that those have been replaced by the city, in talking to operations staff at the facility. So there is a regularity with which they already are. I think it makes sense to, again, given the issues that exist with supply chain, to just make sure there's an adequate supply on hand.
Thank you.
In the back.
Yeah, I'd like to know if you can give us a sense of a risk assessment. So what are since we have a short-term plan and a long-term plan, and it sounds like the long-term plan is going to take 3 to 5 years to get through all of this, what is our risk today and up until the end of that long-term project that this is going to happen again, or some other failure is going to happen? What's your assessment
Certainly
of
the
risk?
bypass pumps are. You know, I was just going to say that the city taking the step to have the bypass pumps in place, that greatly reduces the risk of overflow. I'm not going to say it'll eliminate it, but it greatly reduces it. It provides a secondary independent pumping means that the city operation, the operation staff can go to and turn on and pump the flows from the station. Certainly, in place currently are the rental units. The city is in the process of procuring permanently installed pump units there, so they're not going away. And I would certainly expect that it would be the city's intent to keep those in place through completion of a next upgrade and making sure the next upgrade doesn't have similar issues that are being experienced now.
And the other thing those pumps in the parking lot do is that if they're, you know, particular pump, one of the 4 pumps needs more maintenance, needs a replacement part, and we have the ability to shut that station down, go completely on bypass, do the work that needs to be done, and then return power back to the station. So it gives us flexibility. It's not only sitting there as redundant, it's also actually allowing us to do work that needs to be done.
So I also wasn't following, so the original 4 pumps in the station, so 2 is not working, right? That's what had the catastrophic break. So of the 4, can you tell me what's working today?
So I can tell you that 2 has had replacement components come in, so 2 is back up and running. The volute, the area that was damaged, that was sent to the pump manufacturer's facility for evaluation. We've recently last week received a report on that, and that pump unit will be returned to the city. But that component that failed has been replaced with a spare component. My understanding is, I believe it's pump 3, the motor for pump 3 is currently scheduled for maintenance next, but since that occurrence, all 4 pumps have been brought online and have been operational since that time. Again, knowing that pump 3 needs to have maintenance done on the motor.
Thank you. Thanks for being
Okay.
Yes, I just want to know, people that are replacing these pots and equipment now, is that the original ones that did it? Who is doing this?
No.
No,
Sorry.
no. So the contractor we have they do our pump station maintenance. They had nothing to do with the construction of the facility in 2015. So a completely different company. And they have lots of expertise in pump stations.
In the back?
With regard to the smell, I do notice the same time of day, maybe where people are flushing a little bit more frequently than other times. I wonder if the small pump that can handle 5 million gallons a day or something smaller, if there's too much flow, the large pump kicks on, then that one takes up the capacity. When that happens, you might get cavitation, air bubbles, things that happen. Air is going to get into the system no matter what, and the pump's going to create that. It's going to go up. I think in those pipes that you have, especially the ones that are very obvious, that are on the 2x4s and the chain link fence there, those ones have pressure relief valves, I would suspect. I don't know if they are, but what I would think is some of that smell is coming from there, where you're relieving the pressure that's in the pipes of the sewer main, not just the wet well smell, which is a separate area of the system. So are you looking into that and at different times when that might be kicking on?
Yeah, so we can't, so I believe those valves are air release valves, and their intent is to allow air to escape, which usually is an occurrence when the system is first put online. Once the pumps run, the system has been activated, that line, that force main, the pipe from the station up to the top of the hill at Belmont Street, if the pumps are off, that line stays full at all times. So there is less of an opportunity for the air bubbles to develop at that time. But those may have been installed as a means to expel air as part of the original construction. Also to, maybe relieve air as the bypass pumps turn on.
That's what I
But-
think he's referring to.
But again, that's a rare occurrence that those have run since they've been installed, or since. Yeah, I think, the one time they were run is, one of the things that we found as part of this investigation is that the isolation valves on the discharge side of the pumps were leaking. Having the bypass pumps in place gave the city the opportunity to do a maintenance program to replace, packing, and restore those valves so that they're fully functioning while not losing any pumping capacity. And I think that was, and maybe one other time those pumps were called to come on recently?
We test them, I think, weekly to
Yeah.
make sure they're running, but
Okay,
they've actually been called to run only twice.
okay.
So a pump under normal operating conditions, though, is going to give you cavitation. So like when you have a boat out there, the propeller's in the water, and you somehow get air. There's no air there. The air comes out of the water, out of the sewage, and those air relief valves are still going to release that air. So
Yeah,
I'm just-
yeah,
I'd like
that's-
to maybe investigate it.
We can look into that, Certainly, and these force mains have been designed so that they're continually uphill. So frequently, any air bubbles and trained air will travel within the pipeline up to the discharge point as well. The air release valves normally would come into play if there happen to be intermittent high and low points within the line. But we can look at that to see if that's.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all. I think we've answered most of your questions so far. Everyone may not be happy where we are at this point, but I think if you look back, we are moving forward, hopefully in the right direction. I understand there's still some design issues that have to be looked at. The last bit of information I wanted to provide everyone, they talked to you about a grant process that they're going to use all this information for to try to obtain a grant next spring. There's a process called a bonding process in the legislature. We did a transportation bond bill about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe less. So basically what a bond bill is, if you see any major infrastructure, that's usually money that the state has borrowed and that is actually a bond. So when we pass a bond bill, we could pass a $2 billion bond bill, but you'll see $5 billion worth of projects in it. The reason for that is some projects go forward, some don't. But the legislature, when they do that, we approve through the legislature those projects, but we approve those for the governor then to decide which ones get funded. So in the last transportation bond bill, I was able to get a $5 million bond language to do this work. So now next Wednesday, myself and representatives from the city are meeting with the governor's office, Administration and Finance, and we're going to ask to see if they will fund that $5 million. So if we can do that, then obviously that takes the pressure off the city having to come up with the $6 million, all of the $6 million, or that grant process. So again, the legislature, we have approved that. So now we just got to get the administration to sign on and actually fund that request. So hopefully by next Wednesday, we'll have that meeting, and hopefully shortly after that, we'll get some sort of answer from them whether they will fund it or not. So that's the last bit of information that we want to provide you. I guess we will follow up at some point later on when we have more information, or?
Yes.
Happy to.
Okay. All right, other than that, thank you very much.
Thank you.